I love art books. Let's talk about them.
The first book I want to talk about is Color and Light. This book is one of the very few art books that I've actually read through. I don't know, I'm the worst. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I very rarely read through the art books completely. I am a visual learner, let's just say that. James Gurney has so much valuable information in this book. I would highly recommend it to anybody that's looking to better themselves as painters. I am weird. Maybe I'm not weird, but I like to bookmark my stuff when I'm going through it. So I have a whole bunch of things sticky noted and tagged as I'm reading through my art books. There's a lot of things that stick out to me that I want to save for the future. I don't know, just as an example, I have like this one right here. That's like for spotlighting and how spotlighting creates drama. I really like this painting. I think it's really cool. Or things that stick out to me like moonlight actually being red and not like a yellow or whitish color. This one blew my mind, and I really like this painting too. Very cool. This is what I do with my art books. James Gurney's book is extremely valuable, and most of the really valuable stuff that I've found are actually in the back of this book. Not to say that the stuff in the front is not valuable, but there's a lot of things that artists often talk about in art books about how they get started on projects and things like that. A lot of the really important things for painters especially, and very niche things that are actually really important are in the back of this book, like subsurface scattering, where light goes through flesh or flesh-like objects like oranges and what it does to light but through skin. Or like the color zones of the face. This one is really interesting, how the top of the face is actually sort of a yellow hue, where the middle of the face has more blood in it, so it has a red hue and then a bluish hue on the bottom. This one I really like with specular reflections. There's a lot of things that honestly I could go into huge depth with in this book and make its own separate videos out of. This one is extremely useful. I would highly recommend this one to anybody who's looking to improve their painting skills. Not even painting skills, just art skills in general. 10 out of 10, recommend Color and Light. Check it out, guys. The next one that I want to show everybody is kind of niche. This is the Animator's Survival Kit. I find this book to be really useful, not specifically for painting, but more for illustration. Things like posing are really interesting. I think animators are really good at it. Like this one has how to do a walk cycle in it, and I find the posing of the walk cycle really interesting. Or this one, like how expressions have flexibility in them. So the exaggeration of the pose on the face. This one's actually really fascinating. Or weight. I find weight in pose to be really important and convincing for the audience or your audience looking at your work. So things like characters arching backs to lift something heavy, or their posture whenever they're carrying something heavy and how the arch might reverse. All of this stuff is really cool. I find it very useful, especially in posing characters. Or putting pressure and how certain appendages or certain parts of the body will bend in certain ways whenever you apply pressure to them. I find really fascinating and very helpful. Parts of the book are like things like anticipation, so posing for something that's about to happen can cause a lot of interest for the viewer. Or just talking about body language, right? So looking for contrast, especially when you're doing storytelling. I find this to be really interesting. In fact, I've looked at a lot of this stuff for researching for illustrating my children's book. How somebody might look, and then if they hear a noise or they get startled by something, what their body language changes to. This book is really useful. I would highly recommend it, especially to animators, people who are looking to get into the animation industry. It's extremely helpful. I don't think there's anything more useful, actually, as far as art books go, than this one when it comes to animation. The next one that I want to show is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Now, even if you're not interested in drawing comics professionally, this book is extremely useful. It gives a lot of basic information. Like, I think it's targeted towards a much younger audience. So if you're a younger person looking to get into art, especially young teens, or even older, like adolescents, you might be looking to get into something like this. Now, this book has a lot of basics of drawing in it. It goes back to how many heads tall is a character. Now, they get into a lot of like heroic and idealistic art. So this isn't necessarily realistic for if you're looking to do realism in your artwork, right? So they're making the heroic male 8.5 foot or 8.5 heads tall in this. That's a heroic male, right? One that's very tall, one that's very muscular. And in fact, they even make the female character 8.5 heads tall, because typically you see a female about 3/4 or a head shorter than male figures are. So this one's actually really interesting. And they go into things like hip ratio to shoulder ratio, and that's all really interesting. They go through like dynamic posing and adding detail. Ones that I really like, or things that stuck out to me, are changing the figure to fit like the character of the person. So designing people like Kingpin right here, making him totally unrealistic, right? Huge stature, wide, very blocky sort of character, but using that sort of shape design to create this character is really interesting. Something else that popped out to me was exaggerating poses. So John Buscema, I think he was the artist for this. Fantastic artist. Yeah, John Buscema was the artist for this. So John Buscema goes over like the weakest poses versus like the best poses, and ones that are really static, not really very exaggerated or sort of weak, and ones that are stretched out, exaggerated in the middle of an action pose. Those are the best, and I thought that drawing actually was really interesting. So he goes over, like, again, what's more interesting as poses go. This one's pretty weak, right? Just somebody standing there. And then this one is more heroic. Head slightly tilted down, wider legs. Or like this one versus this one, where the head is tilted down, whereas this one is not. Wider legs. Sort of more menacing, more heroic. And then there's just some interesting poses that I really like. Referencing poses here from John Buscema. So this one is really interesting. There's a lot of really good stuff in here, and they talk about how to do layouts and plotting, working with artists on comic books. But again, even if you're not interested in doing anything comic book wise, this book is actually really helpful for just storytelling in general. That's How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. I also have How to Draw Comics the DC Way, or something like that. How to draw comics with DC Comics. That one's not as good. I'm not a huge fan, and that's coming from somebody who I prefer DC Comics over Marvel Comics. This one is much better. John Buscema is much more of a professional artist, and it's just classic. I think this book came out in like the early 80s or something like that, and they've been reprinting it ever since. Okay, the next book that I want to go through, and I've lost the dust cover to this one, but this book is super important for a lot of artists. And I don't think any art video should go without mentioning Bridgman's Complete Guide to Drawing from Life. This book is life-changing for artists, in my opinion, especially for developing structure for the body. You can't get anything else that's more foundationally important for artists. There's so many things in here that I really like, and a lot of things that I have bookmarked. But like, honestly, every single page in this book is extremely valuable. And honestly, so many artists go around talking about how you should redraw every single thing in these books. And maybe don't redraw every single thing, right? I wouldn't necessarily say redraw all of these boxes, right? But definitely go through and draw this figure. And he goes over how to draw this figure using this shape, the proportions for the box. Some of the things that really stick out to me are things like rhythm. Rhythm really introduces like interesting poses to people that capture attention. He goes over muscles of the neck, which I think is very important. This one is difficult for a lot of artists, so I bookmarked this one. I always like going over anatomy in the neck just because it sells. Also, going over the pec muscles. These are really important because it shows insertion points for the muscles and how it attaches to that like bow tie bone that goes between the ribs, and how it attaches to the humerus here. This is really important if you're studying anatomy. So a lot of anatomical references in these books. It also goes over like shapes for the body and what things should look like and how they're shaded. And a lot of Bridgman stuff looks really boxy, really square. It really just helps to show the body in a much simpler way, because a lot of people get really confused about muscle striations, where things fit in, and just to keep it in a general blocky shape, These are really important for studying. Muscles of the leg construction. I find these to be one of the best ones that you can find in art books, especially if you're looking at anatomy. But honestly, guys, every single page in this book is super important. I wouldn't skip a single page in this book. Now, I don't necessarily know what everything is named scientifically, but you don't necessarily have to as an artist. You should just know what they look like and know where they insert, where they attach, what they look like when they're flexed, when they're relaxed, and this goes over all of that stuff. Very important book for all artists, in my semi-professional opinion. Okay, another super foundational book for artists is Drawing the Head and Hands by Andrew Loomis. This is extremely important. I actually don't even have a lot of this bookmarked because I find a lot of the pages important, so I flip through everything. But the ones that I do have bookmarked are how to draw the head from every angle. Andrew Loomis is the classic way to structure a head. These are really important, how to use the Loomis method and how to construct it using the ball and then shaving the sides of the ball off, and how to put the grid of the face on there, how the standard head is constructed, how big it should be. Obviously all of this has changed from person to person, but the standard, normal, or average head, this is what it looks like. Also, I use a lot of these for hand references and head references, especially for children. I don't know if you guys can see that. Because children are sort of hard to get down. Their proportions are different. You can mess a child up real quick if you don't know how to proportion them whenever you're drawing. So a lot of things in here are really important, and just for time's sake, I can't go over everything, but I would highly recommend that you guys check this out if you're learning, especially trying to learn how to draw the head. Okay, we're done with foundational books for now. I want to go ahead and show you guys some just inspirational books that I use, or books that I just use for reference, because I think they're cool and I like to have them in my library. This one I would recommend to everybody that is looking to get into environment art, character concept art. This one is really fascinating. This is a book about Hayao Miyazaki, who is the creator of Studio Ghibli, and a lot of his stuff is really cool. This is Hayao Miyazaki right here. And I just have a bunch of stuff that I really like, stuff that I find really fascinating, like this one from Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind. Like, a lot of these things are really rough watercolors from Miyazaki, and I find that really fascinating to look at like the rough paintings and drawings or illustrations that he did in order to get ready for shooting movies. I have a lot of stuff that are bookmarked in this one, and I wrote a note here that says, like, you can tell that he's a noodler because, like, all of the little tiny detail in here is crazy going through in the watercolor. His drawings get really detailed in comparison to others that he's done. Just like rough sketches of what Howl's Moving Castle looked like before it's in its final form, before it became Super Saiyan 3. And inspirational quotes that I really like: the artist must fabricate a lie that seems so real. Viewers will think the world depicted might possibly exist. I think that's really cool. From Nausicaa still, and these were like pre her final form, right? Pre Super Saiyan 3. This was like the final drawings that determined what Mei and Sasuke look like for My Neighbor Totoro. And it's just really cool to see how rough they look, right? Because everything in a Studio Ghibli movie looks so clean, looks so perfected, and I'm just like, how do these artists do it? How much time do they spend on like the background paintings? And we'll get into that here in a second. Or like drawings in watercolors from Princess Mononoke. This is my favorite Studio Ghibli movie of all time. I love Princess Mononoke. Oh, dude, and this is where we get into like the background paintings, and some of these, if I look at them for too long, like, I get actively discouraged because I'm like, these are so good. I don't understand how anybody can paint like this in such a perfect way. It all looks so good. Like, look at this reflection on the floor. How perfect does this look? It's insane. It's insane to me. Or like this one right here, and the perspective on this looks so perfect. Every single little square, and these are all hand painted. It just blows my mind. So I just have a whole bunch of like my favorite paintings, background paintings from here. Like, environment art also really fascinates me as well. Like, these trees. The texture on the trees looks so good. And I know that's all learned brushwork and stuff like that. Their nature shots, honestly, I like a little bit more because they're less perfect than, like, their structure shots or building shots. Like, this is obviously a classic one from Spirited Away. But yeah, just things that I really like from this book. A lot of the final background paintings and things. There's an endless amounts of treasure in this one. This one is beautiful. Another classic one from Spirited Away. But yeah, a lot of these are just beautiful, right? Highly recommend this book, especially if you're looking to find something inspirational, find something that'll get you going and make you want to paint. Highly recommend these. So, this is, again, Hayao Miyazaki. Shoot. Alright, I also really like looking at a lot of Blizzard artists' work. And this book is the Cinematic Art of World of Warcraft. I found this book for really cheap because it was damaged. I think I bought it for like $7 and the original cover price on this is $50. So you might not necessarily want to go out and buy it, but I'll show you some stuff that I really liked from here. Like when they were getting ready for, I think oh shoot, I can't even know the names of these expansions because I was never really big into World of Warcraft. I love the storyline, but I was too broke to ever pay for it monthly. Like these images of the dragons, the design for these characters are so cool. Arthas, I don't know if that's how you say it, but like I remember playing Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3 when I was really little, or just like looking at character designs, like rough images of like what they were going to do for their cinematic shot is really cool. Like thumbnailing it out. I like seeing that from artists. Oh, going over like armor, how it's created. But just looking at like rough shapes and stuff and how it came to be. Going over like poses for some of the orcs and the combats. These are really cool. This is just for like inspirational purposes, right? This was freaking awesome. There's a shot of the ship right here. Like these designs, this makes me just want to sit down and draw all day. So I love looking at this stuff, especially for inspiration. This is just one of the ones that I really like in my collection. Not necessarily that you should go out and buy it, but I thought I would show you guys. Okay, another one that I really find very cool. Like I said, I really like art books, especially from like video games, fantasy things, and I love Diablo. So these games are also very cool to me. I think going in and looking at all of this stuff is very cool. I wrote these down because I wanted to look at skeletons later and how they build skeletons and pose skeletons. Or like this one is super cool. I liked looking at all like the design sketches for this. I made a little note here that says like posing in rough sketch is super important. You want to get posing down before you actually start painting into your final piece. This I thought was a super cool digital painting. Oh, I tabbed this one because I thought the armor designs were super cool on this one. This is looking at like T-poses and stuff like this, especially if you're working at like a video game studio. You're going to want to T-pose characters so that 3D artists can come in and know exact details. I thought this was really cool, like a bug infused or inspired design. So using like, this inspired me to do like nature crossed over into like different types of armor and clothing and stuff like that. Doing insects or animals as inspiration. But yeah, a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of really cool paintings in this. Like I said, I really like the artists at Blizzard. I think they do a tremendous job. I really love the artists and the art direction for them. Alright, one more thing that I really like to look at are like compendiums. Like I have Invincible compendiums over here, Spawn compendiums. I really like to read comics myself, and oftentimes I'll go through and look at like interesting, like this one I really like how the character is sitting inside this thing that says Smash. Like it says Smash right here, but the character can see through the onomatopoeia. I thought that's really cool. Or like details of the mouth and teeth right here of characters I think are really interesting. Greg Capullo is the artist on this, and a lot of his artwork I think is some of my favorite out of modern artists. Especially his run on Batman New 52, I think he does a really good job. Like this one is so cool. Or just the posing in this is awesome, but like that toothy grin that really sells Spawn I think is awesome. Or like I tagged this one because it's like a romantic pose, right? And it would be something cool to reference later on. So not only do I go through like designated art books, but I also go through like published works that have a lot of artwork in them to reference. I really like this one because it had a crying face in it. It was highly exaggerated, so it caught my attention, and I marked it to reference later. But yeah, these are super cool. I would highly recommend picking up compendiums, especially from like Image Comics, independent comic artists. They do a really good job. Okay, the last book that I'm going to show you is gigantic. It's huge. It's like my pride and joy of my collection of art books right now. This thing was originally, I don't recommend anybody going out to necessarily buy it because I think it's like $200 or something like that, but I got this one pretty cheap. I can't remember how I did it, but I found one after looking for a few months, and I finally found one that was pretty cheap. And I don't have the dust jacket on it currently, it's somewhere else, but I love looking through Frank Frazetta's work. His is some of the most inspirational for me. The posing on so many of his characters is just amazing. And I could go through this book and tell you why I love it all day, but instead I'm just going to show you some things that I think are fantastic. And if you haven't already, I would highly recommend looking up the Frazetta Girls Instagram account, because they post daily their grandfather's work there, and it's an awesome resource for artists. His stuff is just sensational. I don't even know any other words to describe it, but I made a note here that said to look on the reverse, because I thought this Tarzan piece was super cool with the lion. Like, even his signature, like, I don't know, everything about Frazetta I admire quite a bit. Or like this pose right here, super interesting with this character. I've drawn this one several times actually. Or just like just famous covers. Like, these are, I don't know, they're iconic to me. I can't get over how amazing these paintings are and how creative he was. Obviously. Like, poses on this crucifix here. Very cool. I don't know. I can't get over it. Like, I love this book so much, and I look through it. So, like, just look at how much I freaking tagged in this thing. All of his stuff is amazing. Like, looking at this pose, his shadows are one of the things that I can't get over a lot of the times. Just how he develops his characters. Look at that. Pretty thick, you know. Yeah. But yeah, I could flip through this thing all day. And honestly, I might even make a video one day of just flipping through this freaking book right here, because there's so much stuff that's really valuable in it. And like I said, guys, I wouldn't necessarily pay $200 or $300 for this book, because I think it has, if not all, most of his collected paintings and drawings from when he was an artist. And his granddaughter did such a fantastic job putting this together. This, I think, is the best collection of his works. So if you're interested in looking at Frank Frazetta's paintings, his sketches, his final drawings, highly recommend going and looking at at least their Instagram account, right? If you can't afford the book or find it at a cheap price. So, don't look, kids. Anyways, fellas, those are the art books that I really like as an artist. Hopefully you guys enjoyed looking at them. Hopefully you guys feel inspired. If you guys find this video useful, interesting, or relatable, or anything, or even if you just like it, make sure you like the video. Subscribe to the channel to keep looking out for more. I really appreciate you guys. Go make some awesome artwork, and y'all have a fantastic week. Thank you so much. Love you too. Bye.